to Thomas Morgan, more on some real estate and how it can benefit nature.
Hey everybody, Thomas Morgan here, TMO. My project is called Basin, and Basin is scaling climate, carbon, and nature project development using ecosystem services and natural capital. Ashley, we've met before with Jimmy. I was on Jimmy's podcast a long time ago, so on the Opportunity DB. So nice to see you here involved in kind of this nature and
everybody knows
stuff.
Jimmy, right? You know, he's like he's ubiquitous.
and you also, I mean, you guys have your studio and your microphones just dialed, so I love it. But nice to see you here.
Well,
and
thanks
Kevin
for being on here. I'll tell Jimmy you said hello.
Cool. And Kevin, it was nice to hear about biodiversity credits, and what stuck out for me is making this stuff profitable or investable instead of just like philanthropic or donations. So that really resonated with me. We did part one of this last night, so I'm going to breeze through some of the stuff we covered last night that was recorded, and I'm going to try and leave the last 15 minutes just for a dialogue and questions, and just kind of approach it from a bunch of different angles. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So basically, the way we're approaching it is, let me just clear this out here. And Matt, can everyone see my screen there? If someone can just thumbs up me. So everyone knows what the value of real estate is, right? Like, you can use Zestimate, you can get an appraisal, you can get a broker's opinion of value, you can drive down the street. But a lot of people don't know what the value of natural capital and ecosystem services are. All the things, the benefits that nature provides to people: clean air, clean water, pollination, habitat, erosion control, stuff like that. So that's what we're going to cover. Is we're really going to kind of dance around value, not price or cost, but value, and not just financial value, but other types of value, whether it be social value, environmental value, risk reduction value, climate resilience value. Just a little background on me. I've been in commercial and investment real estate for 20 years. I've done $1.5 billion of volume in 40 states. And I've done deals on every single type of property with high net worth investors working under another section of the tax code, the 1031 exchanges. And if you look at this little list over here on the right, basically everything that's either in white, so office, fast food, drugstore, these are traditional real estate investment classes: office, industrial, retail, multifamily, residential, et cetera. The stuff in the yellow is what we're building. We want to add a new real estate investment class to the real estate investment market as a way to mobilize capital to solve this mess we're in. So if more dollars can come into the space, into ecosystems, regenerative agriculture, like Kevin talked about, rainforests, adaptive reuse of buildings, biodiversity, whatnot, then all of a sudden we have a major solution in terms of capital for climate finance and nature finance. And the way we're looking at it is the annual real estate investment market globally of leased real estate investments, so like passive real estate investments, is about 1.3 trillion a year. And our goal is to mobilize, either create or take 10% of that for climate and nature. So that's about $130 billion. It's not just for us, but it could be for Cranmore, and it could be for Ashley's deals, and it could be for Matt's deals. Like, it's not just going to be us, but we're trying to create a framework around that to mobilize that $130 billion of agnostic or indifferent capital, doesn't care about nature or climate, into the climate finance. So I shared a good meme last night. Matt, here's another one as promised. A few of us are old enough here to remember when in The Graduate, one word, what's the future? It was plastics, right? So this one is biodiversity. So as we're going through this for the last 15 minutes, just keep in the back of your mind restoration and conservation of land and ecosystems and natural carbon sinks, and start maybe kind of go through your mind about, like, in your town, a property you drive by, run by, that's either dilapidated, contaminated, that could be restored, or pristine, beautiful, but threatened, that could be conserved. So kind of think through like a scene like that. Maybe we can cover that at the end. But last night we covered cost, price, and value. So how can this building over here on the right cost $1.5 million, be worth or be priced at $1 million, but also be valued at 2.5 million? So same asset. It just depends on how you're looking at it and your different approaches of value. And we can get into why that is later, but a lot of it has to do with income, right? And what kind of income the property is generating. Cost is construction prices, whatnot. So that's just something we covered last night. Just kind of keep in mind we're driving towards value. What's the value of an asset? And our context is that society and the economy is built on nature. We are a part of nature. We are not separate of nature. So if we don't protect natural capital and ecosystem services and build it into our GDP, our economic practices, it doesn't matter how much carbon we're going to remove. So this is a good donut hole graphic of where nature, the biosphere, fits, and economy and society are on top of that. We also covered the value of nature. All the hype is around the carbon markets, being $1 trillion to $4 trillion in the next 20 years, whatever. The value of nature annually, so ecosystem services, that the benefits that are provided to people, is around 177 trillion a year. So put that in context, carbon removal is about 1% of that value that nature provides us, whether it be direct benefits of raw materials, indirect benefits of pollination, air purification, water purification, et cetera, or even protective benefits of mangroves and storm protection, and aesthetic and spiritual value. And then we broke that down further in terms of like per acre per year. And anyone who's in commercial real estate or been in the real estate investment business knows that we value assets based on NOI, or net operating income, that annual value per year of what's being produced from the property. So land, right, is unproductive, has no basically no money coming from it, whereas buildings produce income. So these values, this is from FEMA, start to give us ballparks of what nature is providing us. $15,000 an acre per year for certain ecosystem services, erosion control, habitat, and you can break it down by land cover and whatnot. Here's our stack that we've developed. This is licensed under Creative Commons for nonprofit use. If you want to use it for profit, you can actually use it in the Basin protocol. But on the right there is about 23 different services that we've come through hundreds of studies to narrow it down to these and to be able to quantify these in dollars per acre per year. We have about 4,000 studies we're basing this off of. So another meme before we get into the actual property is, if you're in nature-based solutions and you see the arguments around carbon removal, you got biological on the left and technological on the right. Just to be clear, we need both, right? We need nature, we need ecosystems, and we're going to need technological removals to get us out of this mess. So that's just another fun meme of like this argument. It's not really an argument. We need both. So the system I just showed you, the basin stack, can work on any land cover, any biome. We can do it for you. You can, we are going to be doing some private placements, similar to what Kevin and the group is doing. You can invest at the actual asset level, or you can invest at the protocol level, or you can actually invest at the certificate level of all those different ecosystem services, pollination, air quality, resilience, whatever you're interested in and care about, basically, or place. So it might be like I'm here in the Roaring Fork Valley of Colorado. You might want to just invest in the Roaring Fork Valley. So we offer a multitude of investment options. And this is an example of just an urban property we're working on. It's adjacent to a bunch of multifamily and residential, commercial. It was going to be a big box store. There's a lot of resistance to putting a big box store, because if you look at the property here, there's a river basically that flows through it, and it provides a lot of nutrient cycling, carbon sequestration, erosion control, pollution filtration, and just aesthetic value. The community wants to see this basically as a park. So we're trying to say, okay, how can we actually monetize this deal? And that picture of that deal it's a bigger property, but we're just going to use an example of a 10-acre property, vacant. It's worth $1 million. But as urban open space, the value provided to society stakeholders per year is around $15,000 per acre per year. So our question and our business model that we're working to answer, and we're pretty close to cracking the code on it, is how do we actually convert that $15,000 per acre per year to cash flow? So let's say someone, either an insurance company, a bank, a government, upstream or downstream beneficiary of these ecosystem services is willing to pay us, let's just say $100,000 a year to basically on this 10-acre property. That's just the existence value of what's existing. That doesn't include outcome-based stuff like agroforestry, reforestation, additional things that could be done on the property, pollination credits and whatnot. This is just the ecosystem services that FEMA and all these 4,000 studies basically have established scientifically of what economic value this land is producing for all the beneficiaries. We currently get this stuff for free. So we look at the values, it kind of goes back to that first thing I mentioned about cost, price, and value. Vacant, it's worth $1 million. You buy it, you speculate, and maybe you can develop something, maybe you can sell it later for $1.2 million, $1.5 million, but there's no income. But if you can generate $100,000 per year of cash payments, and we have a lease structure we're working on, that's a 10% yield, 10% cap rate on a piece of vacant land all of a sudden. So who wants to add that to the portfolio? Cash flowing nature, basically. And if you take it a step further on cap rate valuations, if you value it somewhere between a 6 and a 7.5 cap, it all of a sudden takes that $1 million asset to $1.3 million or $1.6 million. So who wants to flip a property and make $300,000 to $600,000 in a year just because you've converted some cash flow, some income on it? And then again, plus the stacking sales that like someone could come along and we could actually lease that property to someone grazing. We could build some affordable housing on the side of it, do other sustainable development. There's a lot of, do other additional carbon projects. There's a lot of other stuff that could be done on top of that. So that's where we are. That's just an example of kind of how we're thinking about this and creating this real estate investment class. So I just want to open it up for if you have any properties, in mind, or raise your hand.
I'll jump in first here, actually. So connecting with the last couple presenters on opportunity zones, have you looked at that at all for this? I know you were a 1031 specialist, which was another very tax advantaged way of being able to exit one investment and get into another one. Just wondering if you've looked at opportunity zones at all. There are quite a few of them, 8,700 as Ashley told us. And wondering if you've thought of that as like kind of a stacking strategy on top of the nature-based lens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where this started with, originally I was going to form an OZ fund, and that's how I got to meet Jimmy and be on his podcast. And the OZ legislation framework aligns heavily with, I think it's called the C40 or the CJ40, the Biden justice program related to the basically inequality and environmental risk and resilience risk. If you use their mapping program, most of those are in opportunity zones, or a lot of them are. So it's at an asset level, we could definitely use OZ financing. And we've actually explored, like Glenwood Springs down the road from me is actually an opportunity zone. So we're 40 miles from Aspen, but it's considered an OZ. Yeah. So I could move my office down there.
Avon, Colorado, a good portion of it right across from Beaver Creek, parts of it you can almost walk to the mountain is in an opportunity zone as well. So
McCall, Idaho, yeah.
So cool. And full disclosure with you, Timo, I did do a little flyer investment with you and your staffs. Does anyone else have any questions here? I don't know if we have. Yeah, Jimmy, go. Or excuse me, not Jimmy, Ashley.
Hey, I'll answer to Jimmy too. That's not that bad of an insult. So Thomas, who's the buyer that's going to pay the $100,000 and why? Like the $100,000 a year that you just modeled out. Like I'm fascinated by that because I mean, you're effectively creating money from nothing. And so like, what do they get? And is there a market for that? Have you proven this out? Because I mean, I could give you, man, I got probably 500 people with properties that'd be interested in this.
Yeah, so great question. That's the core to our thesis, or the key to cracking the code is this who pays question. If we break it down to two words, like who pays and why. And Swiss Re, the big reinsurance company, I think they're the second biggest reinsurer in the world, and I'd be happy to share the report or send you the link. They've done a lot of mapping on economic dependencies per ecosystem service, like what industry, whether it be agriculture or mining, or hospitality, retail, construction. Like think about the natural resources of all those industries and where they get their stuff. Like an example I like to use is for example, Starbucks, right? Like people think, oh, they just sell drinks in their stores, but they're actually one of the bigger bottlers. They're like Coca-Cola or Pepsi because they're bottling their lattes and cappuccinos to sell in the supermarkets. So they've already started to identify where they're using the word basin, like not, like that's our name, it's basin, like watersheds, but they're using high risk WRI basin mapping and looking at like what's their economic risk because they're pulling water out of an aquifer somewhere. So the idea is that mapping these economic dependencies, and my whole team, that's really what we're focused on right now, is like who would buy a credit. So it's, we could, everyone's heard of carbon credits or biodiversity credits, but we're thinking of it in terms of impact certificates. So resilience and renewal impact certificates. They're priced in dollars, they're per unit, but they tie to land or place or purpose, depending on like what's that economic risk. Do they have a biodiversity risk? Do they have an erosion risk? Do they have urban heat risk? Or do they just have a place?